Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of three opinionated guys with mics and too much free time. Strong enough to stop a speeding movie rumor, more powerful than a bad comic book event, able to waste hours of time asking stupid questions to people who have better things to do. It's Dave, Ben, and John. It's Superhero Speak.
Hey everyone, you're listening to Superhero Speak. Now I'm your host Dave.
And Ben.
And why do we keep imagining like they're going to believe that nothing happened before we do our intro?
That's the illusion we're trying to keep up, John.
But the best
we
talk
sit at the ready.
The best talk comes before we do our intro. That's what they really want to hear.
I don't do anything other than sit and watch television and movies when I am not on the show recording. I sit in a corner in the dark and drink
In fact,
bean, and that's it.
He doesn't have the ability to speak until he hears me say the intro.
Exactly. Until I hear, this is Dave, I don't know, I can't say a word.
This is why I do not open the attachments that Dave sends us. Processing is not what I want to go through. I'm really not into it. I'd rather be my own man.
The rose is red.
Besides, my only master is in this bottle I've got here.
Oh.
There are two roses in the vase.
Are you winter soldiering us?
Yeah, that's actually a reference to Dollhouse.
Oh, okay.
+5 for the beard.
So
what
are we
going to talk about, though, is it?
No. What are we here to talk about? Was there a new show that came out on Netflix recently?
I have
the
Greatest American Fist.
Yeah, it's something itching at my chest that I want to talk about here.
Oh, I still over that.
Yeah.
You have a tattoo that you don't remember?
It's this burning desire right in the center of me that I just need to channel through my mouth and into my microphone.
To quote one of my favorite animated shows, it didn't work. It did not work.
So, for those who are slow on the uptake, we are talking about Iron Fist, the latest Netflix Marvel excursion, and the last before the Defenders that we should see sometime later this year.
Yes. So Marvel took Claire Temple, Colleen Wing, Danny Rand, and some other characters and threw it in their Netflix blender, and out came the first season of Iron Fist, and it has come under some interesting criticisms.
There's been some scrutiny.
There was controversy before the show even came out, which we talked about in a previous episode. And it's and I think I don't know. We're gonna get into this.
Yeah, let's start spoiler free for those who seem to have not been able to keep up with the show yet. Just give our fresh,
because this is so timely.
It is what it is, John. I'm just saying, give people a couple minutes to realize what it is we're talking about, and then eventually you'll sink in and like, oh wait, I didn't watch all of this show. I should pause this and go and watch the rest of the season of Iron Fist and come back and see what Dave, John, and Ben have to say about it.
And some people don't actually sit and watch the entire thing in a weekend. Like, some people do watch a couple episodes every night because they have lives, unlike
I've
us.
heard tell that some people actually interact with other human beings, sometimes daily. I think there's baiting involved.
Something, I don't know.
We wouldn't know about that. We're geeks. So, I mean, I managed to fit this in between dealing with the divorce, watching through all three of the Librarians movies, plus the whole new series again, going through all of the episodes I was behind with all the CW shows, picking up 3 new series, and going through the Asterix War. So,
I know there are no spoilers in there, but it still felt like too much information, John.
All right.
Middle name TMI.
So we'll initial reactions. Let's go around the room. Obviously, Iron Fist is based on the Marvel Comics character. He is the last member of what is going to be the Defenders, which will be the next Netflix series that comes out from Marvel. The character was created by Roy Thomas and Gil Kane in the 1970s, actually 1974. Great year, by the way.
Wait, you're telling us something there, Dave. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Possibly the best year on the calendar.
Yeah. Speaking of which, is your birthday coming up soon?
In a couple months.
All right. Just popped in my head for some reason.
I don't know. Yeah.
Why. Anyway, go on.
So where does this fit in the world of the other Marvel Netflix shows? My initial reaction, without giving away anything, a non-spoiler, the first couple episodes I was in. The more I watched it, there were little things about it that were nagging at me, and then by the time I got to the end, I felt like, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Okay,
we'll get into that.
Sure. I'll go next. Similarly, I had high hopes. I remember there was the white savior controversy that came from earlier, but the Iron Fist was always traditionally a white character. I didn't really see fit to the argument of race bending him to be Asian was necessary. And I didn't necessarily see that even in the initial depiction. Like, it wasn't as if he was one white guy going up against a whole bunch of Asian combatants. So I didn't really have a problem with that part of the depiction. I was okay with the faithful adaptation, even though it is sort of a product of the 70s. But similarly, I had a nagging voice as the season progressed that kept, tearing apart bits and bits of it. Mostly that voice is known as my wife, but it was also internal, and it just it did sort of start to lose its thread as it went along, and we can get into the details as we go. John?
Well, I started off with high hopes. First off, I think that this whitewashing thing, this white savior thing, we shouldn't even talk about it. It's a non-issue. It's something that's being brought by people that are ignorant of, like you said, the history of this comic, which, he's never been Asian. So, it's not an issue. Second, I started with high hopes. I liked what I saw initially, and then certain characters were nagging too much, and I don't know. I got about halfway through it, and then from that point on, I managed to finish off the Roots, Buddick, and Draconic Evolution in Minecraft world while it was playing in the background, because I was that much engaged with it. If you get my drift.
Yeah.
So I just we'll go over it again, but there was something about the main character that was not working for me, and we'll just go.
Yeah. So is this part where we get into the spoilery stuff?
Yeah, sure. So warning.
Spoiler warning, do not be past this point, lest ye be ready to hear things that spoil the show, besides the show itself.
Hear ye. Yes. All right. So before the show launched, they had the early reviews. Obviously, I tried to avoid the kind of stuff, but it was all over the news, and it had an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. Actually,
yeah.
Ooh.
I actually believe it was lower before it actually was released, if I remember correctly. This is what
the critical reviews were not good. They panned it heavily before it even came out. I only saw the first 6, but it was enough.
Right. However, I did read some of those reviews, and a couple, again, harped on that topic that John doesn't want to talk about, but that made me feel like, okay, so these are people who don't read the comic, and they're looking for some kind of social justice warrior thing in the show that really shouldn't be there. So I can ignore those reviews, and it's like, okay.
Right. But that issue aside, there were real problems in this show.
Yes. What's interesting too, a nice contrast is, it got an 82% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, which
that's surprising. I mean,
well,
I guess
that's the Marvel
it's rose-colored
effect.
glasses. It's rose-colored glasses. People want it to be great, and some of those reviews probably were from people who didn't actually yet watch the show. They just wanted to up the rating. I'm sure some people liked it. I'm sure we have some listeners who liked it.
So let me get
I'm
to
sure they'll
my
be telling us about it.
let me get to my biggest issue with the show as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I actually am an Iron Fist fan. In fact,
Yes.
a bulk of my comics are the Power Man Iron Fist books from the 70s and 80s, where
Right.
they were the heroes for hire, and I love the stories. I've seen most of the cartoons that he's been depicted in and all that stuff, and he is usually depicted as someone wise beyond his age,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and someone in control of his emotions, because he has to
Yeah.
control his emotions to control his chi to be able to call up the Iron Fist.
Right.
Right.
And part of his
That-
training, part of the martial arts training that he received was to control his emotions so that he could fight well. You can't fight when you're in a rage.
Right. Apparently, they didn't get past those classes in
The-
this version of Gunlun.
The Danny Rand that we got in this show was an emotional mess.
Right. We'll say he had some anger management issues. That kind of, I didn't get that. And my wife found problem that early on too, because it just didn't make sense. Like, he spent 15 years in a Buddhist training.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Sans parents are not. Like, Sans growing up with a proper emotional development, you are in a program where you are being figuratively and literally beaten over the head with these mantras of Zen mentality, and it clearly didn't sink in. Like, I don't know how 15 years of training on that point doesn't leave you the master of your emotions, but he was not that. He was angry all the time. He couldn't explain anything when asked. Like, and that's really some of the plot failings that really bothered me, is like when he was asked direct questions, he couldn't answer them. Like, why he left Kunlun, and why and what was the Iron Fist? Like, why couldn't he show people, what it was to be the Iron Fist? Like, he kept saying these things, but not explaining himself.
Right. He would just say it's complicated a lot. Like, that was an answer.
Right. It wasn't. That's not an answer. That's an evasion. And it's what it is. It's sloppy writing.
I completely agree with that.
And the other thing that didn't come with the 15 years of training, it seems, is fighting style and technique, because not only was he not the best fighter amongst the Defenders, he wasn't even the best fighter in his own show. Like, Colleen Wing was a better fighter than him almost every time she was on screen.
Well,
Those cage matches, she trashed those guys, and it was on display. My point is, all right, I'm not saying that he can't fight, but it was not showcased well. They did not cut those scenes well to portray him as a great fighter.
I think that side of it, and I'm willing to forgive that side of it, has to do with editing. Apparently, who's the actor who played Danny Rand?
Vin Jones.
Vin Jones only got 3 or 5 weeks of training before they started filming.
Oh, why? He should have gone through the Matrix / Guardians of the Galaxy training before he went into this.
Right, but apparently they were trying to get it. They took a long time to cast him, so he only had 5 weeks to train before they started filming. And I think it also suffers from one other thing that people really have glossed over in some of the reviews that I've heard and I've read is Jessica Jones and Luke Cage can fall back on special effects to make this fight seem bigger and crazier and whatnot. And Daredevil falls back on the fact that Matt Murdock wears a mask, so a stunt double can take his place.
This is true. I get where you're going with that.
And so that's why I'm saying I'm willing to forgive, because like a lot of the fight scenes, you could tell it was actually him, and it felt like watching Steven Seagal.
But they don't film. Here's the thing: it was a finite 13 episode series that I assume was mostly written, early on, like when they started shooting. They don't typically shoot things out in order anyway to the chronology of the shows, so why not save a lot of the fight sequences until later when he's more accomplished and can demonstrate the skills better?
And that would
start by shooting all the the dialogue scenes and the walking around town scenes and things that don't require him to perform in that level and give him time to learn.
What's scary is they probably did do that.
Yeah, maybe. It does take a while to learn these skills.
Yeah.
I'm not the producer or the choreographer, so I can't answer those questions.
Yeah.
One great reviewer online described Finn this way. He's one backwards hat and a keytar away from having a kick-ass and emotion band.
See, the thing is,
he's like, my biggest problem with this was, well, first off, like Ben said, the sloppy writing. They could have made the best limit on using his power, his code of ethics. You know?
Right.
He's not going to use the Iron Fist on a person because it would explode them. He should have been...
Or at least use the justification that the Iron Fist is meant to fight the Hand, and if he's fighting people who are not members of the Hand, it would be a waste of that power.
Yeah, but having them have him drugged for the first three episodes, and then after that having his internal conflict, and his anger management issues, which were really not believable. It was kind of like a toddler giving a false tiff because he wanted a cookie. I just did not get any real sense of anger or conflict from him. But anyway, it's just instead of good writing, they relied on just this contrived stuff to keep him from being awesome. He should have been walking through these episodes like Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star. He should have been walking around making people's heads explode, But again, his code says, like you said, Ben, it should have been. Well, I'm sorry, I'm just fighting street thugs. I can't use my Iron Fist on these guys.
And I think the nail that you're really hitting on the head there is the inconsistency of the entire series. All of a sudden he can't. On many levels. Right, he can't use the Iron Fist because he's angry right now, and then it was because he was angry and got beat up that he called up the Iron Fist in the first place when he was in the hospital.
The very first time he used it in the mental hospital, it was through the rage of being beaten that he was able to call upon the power.
But the point of him shouldn't have been able. Rage shouldn't be what kicks it off. It should have been centering himself.
No, and we agree with that. That's what we're saying. It was so inconsistent.
Pointing out the inconsistencies there's embedded hypocrisy in the writing of the show. Another aspect of that is not just in Danny Rand, but in other characters. For instance, Ward. In the events of the very first episode, when he comes and first interacts with them, he tries to have him killed. Like, he sends his security team to murder him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then has a complete 180 at the end of the episode after going through the trials and tribulations that Ward has been through. His end resolve is, "You're my best bud." How do you become a full 180 like that?
No. There were more than just that 180. I mean, at first, let's say Jessica Stroup as Joy Meacham. There were at least 5 times during the first 5 episodes where I was sure she had turned good, or then turned bad, or then turned good, or was the secret mastermind behind everything. Or it comes down to the writing where, in one instance she's like, well, he just really looked like him, and the next thing she's like, well, we had to take care of business. It's like either she split personality or the writing's just not great.
I will disagree with you a little bit on Joy Meacham's character, because I felt that she was gray hat in the way that every person is. Like, she was, to a point, a believable character. I felt like she should have warmed more once she finally accepted that it was Danny, but her reactions up to her reservations up to then made sense. Like, her reservations up to the point of acceptance were understandable. I don't consider that bad writing. I consider some of the other choices around her and every other character bad writing, especially at the end when she's the one proposing that they need to kill Danny.
Yeah, well, that's just the problem between that and Ward Meacham, Tom Pelphrey. I mean, the way their characters were written, they were ping-ponging back and forth between I'm good, I'm evil, I'm good, I'm evil, I'm good, I'm evil. Nobody had, even people, even schizophrenics have some kind of base level of this is the kind of person I am. They didn't have that at all. They were all over the place. I couldn't pin down anything about where their characters were going until towards the end.
Well, they clearly had horrible parental upbringings. I mean, I really feel badly for Ward given all that he had to go through in his life in general. I mean, he was an ass to begin with, and in every depiction they made of him, you kind of could feel for him by the end.
But where was his transformation?
And
where was the point where he decided, I've been bad and I feel bad about it and I need to start doing good stuff now, or I need to make up for what I've done? There was no point. There was no fulcrum where he finally tipped over to the other side. It was just this, that, the other.
The fulcrum seemed to be him getting over his drug addiction, but was it just me? The drug addiction felt thrown in the middle of the series.
Yes and no. I understand it. Like his turn to drugs, he was already using prescription drugs because of his father. He felt he was under the thumb of his father in a way that he was trapped and couldn't get out from. And I read that from it. I know that that's what they were going for. And with the drug addiction, it was a different path to emphasize that and exacerbate that. And I think, and him eventually killing his father, unsuccessfully, but killing his father and dumping him in the lake was his attempt at catharsis from that. And I think if his father didn't come back at that point, we would have seen the good, clean version of Ward sooner. But because his father came back and because he was still under that thumb, like he basically was still felt trapped until the end when his father was finally taken out of the picture. And that's when he felt the weight of the world off of his shoulders and could breathe and be himself.
Right. I just didn't feel like they really showed him having a drug problem in the first 3, 4, or 5 episodes. And then all of a sudden, he's popping pills and drinking, and then they show him put the heroin on. I was like, wait a minute, it just felt like the drug addiction was such an issue out of left field. Like, again, inconsistency in the whole show. And then, so, God, it's like so much wrong with the show. Like, okay, and here's another thing. The character of, Davos.
Mm-hmm.
Who shows up in the last...
His buddy.
Yeah, his best friend from Kunlun, who shows up in the last 4 episodes...
is evil!
Who spends his entire time trying to convince him to come back with him. Because he's the Iron Fist and he has to protect the city. And basically, he's like, no, I have to fight the hand here. And he gets upset and he leaves. And then Danny decides to go back there anyway. Like, what? Like, that drove me nuts.
Yeah.
Well, that and Davos' turn to the dark side, like, what's his name on Doctor Strange, just all of a sudden out of the blue, well, you know what? Piss off. I'm gonna take you all out.
No, I think you're thinking of Bukatu.
Bukatu, yeah.
Oh no, Bukatu was always bad. We knew he...
Yeah, but we didn't know he would. I mean, I sort of suspected he was going to turn out to be bad, but he was sort of that sheep in wolf's clothing.
Right.
Well, yeah, but he was directly from the comics, wasn't he? He was always...
I didn't look into it.
Yeah, he was always part of the hand.
But
he was...
Right, but with Davos, it was like, I didn't feel like we needed his character at all in the show. It didn't... He shows up, trying to convince him to come back, and then he gets mad at him because he won't come back, and then then Danny decides to go back on his own anyway. Like,
yeah.
So why did he show up? What did he add to the show at all?
I don't know. I added a second person to fight alongside of Danny during some fight scenes. Really, it's probably the crux of it. And some context of they are mad that you left kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, you raise a good point. It was like Danny does not communicate well. I mean, at the end, the bottom line is what made this show so difficult and so many times is Danny's inability to communicate like a human being. Because clearly he was willing to go back to Kunlun, just not right that second. So if he made a compelling argument saying, yes, you're right, Davos, we should go back, but I need some time first, and then we'll go. And it could have been, because he did, obviously, he ended up going, so either he doesn't communicate well, or he's the most indecisive person on the face of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'm going with he's the most indecisive person.
Maybe.
Now let's also not leave out the fact that the storyline of the Iron Fist was almost secondary to the soap opera shenanigans going on with the Meacham family. I mean, you could have almost made a second show just about that, and it could have aired on ABC.
So here's, if we get down to basics, I think, we talked inconsistency. The biggest thing is the show didn't know what it wanted to be, and it didn't know who they wanted the enemy to be, the bad guy to be. They try to get you to root for every single person who ends up being a bad guy at some point in this show. They even have you kind of half rooting for the Hand at one point. And it's just what's really going on? They couldn't sit there and say, here's an arc for the first half, here's an arc for the second half. Let's stick to it and let's have it make sense.
Which is in, was it, oh good God, what was the other show? The last show they did. Luke Cage. Yeah, Luke Cage. It had exactly what you just said. They had like 3 very well defined arcs, and it made sense, and it was a nice progression, and it worked great. This was a showcase of schizophrenia. It just they just nobody knew who wanted to be the bad guy. Nobody, the main character, the good guy, never knew who he was, and was obviously emotionally never mature enough to have defeated the dragon. How the hell do you defeat the dragon? Then you just confuse it with his emotional traumas? I mean, seriously.
It senses fear, and he couldn't stick to fear long enough for it to pick him up.
That's another question I have. Okay, so they hinted at the dragon. They never showed the dragon except the eyes.
Yeah.
And it's like...
Well, they wouldn't have wanted Daenerys to come out and,
did they spend no real money on special effects in this?
Well, I think they did. It's just not those types of special effects. I could tell some of those scenes, like the scenes in the end when they're climbing in the mountains, you could tell that those mountains weren't real. They were not really there.
Right, of course.
They didn't even set up a set that looked like rocks that they were climbing on. It was that badly green screened.
Look, but this is Netflix. I mean, hell, the last few episodes of Stephen Colbert, they had smog on his TV show. There's no way that they didn't have the money for that on this show. I think maybe they spent it all on,
training to fight.
Yes.
Trying to at least, and act.
Yeah, I just...
Or trying to hide the fact that Colleen Wing was just so much more a badass than Danny was.
I mean, I kind of feel like in the last episode they showed the dragon, people would have forgave it a little bit more.
I don't know.
It was
Maybe
they were
saving, but not much.
They were saving all their money for that special effect at the end. I get it now.
Yeah, right.
No, what would have been cool if he went back, found the portal, and the portal was closed, and all that was left in front of it was a dragon head. That would have been interesting.
Well, I took the meaning to be that the dragon was metaphorical anyway. It's sort of like the cave in The Empire Strikes Back. But that aside, I have something that I wanted to mention, and it's a theory, and I want to run it by you guys to see what you think.
It was all a dream?
No. It was a nightmare, and I woke up and the show didn't actually air yet.
It was all a dream by Loras Tyrell on Game of Thrones.
But this is only the first half of his origin story?
Well, no, not that.
Oh.
Something much simpler and subtler and related to the events of this season's arc, but that wasn't explicit. So we saw, like I said earlier, the juxtaposition of Ward's behavior from one end to the other, of being murderous at one end and being totally well adjusted and friendly at the end. And then similarly, seeing Joy being cautious but normal in the beginning, but then like making murderous plans at the end. But at the end, when she's making those plans, they purposely pan over to show that Madame Gao is sitting like 2 tables away. What do you guys think of the idea that Madame Gao has an ability, and that ability is sort of mental influence over others, to the extent that she's the reason that either of them ever had the thought to kill Danny?
Is that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe Wikia?
Well, you can't really say because Madame Gao is not a 616 canon character. She's been equated to the Crane Mother, but there's really not a lot of information on the Crane Mother either to say what if she has a power set or if she's good or evil per se. She's typically considered one of the immortals and protectors of Kunlun. But
I know she is over 400 years old.
Right. So to say that she is definitely that they're both one and the same character, and B, that if she were that character, she would have that specific power. There's nothing I can look up to validate that.
Mm. Well, maybe, but that would be.
Otherwise, I just know what they were alluding to with that scene.
But the thing is, I think that's too subtle for the way this was written. I think that the rest of the writing kind of proves that the writer or writers of this script were not of the mindset that they would come up with that kind of thing.
Maybe.
And if they did, it would be explained.
Well, that's not something that the writers of this show would have came up with.
I disagree. I think they thought of a lot of things. It's just they didn't convey their message as well. Like, I think there was a lot more there than we're seeing, but because they were shitty at showing
What
us.
I'm saying is, if Madame Gao was introduced a while ago in Daredevil, so that could have been a plan all along for her as a character.
Right.
And it's possible. I mean, that's something else. I didn't feel, maybe I missed something because I kind of started losing interest at the end. I don't feel they really explained what happened to Joy in the sense of, like...
Well, Joy died when we watched this, but,
in the sense of...
Not that Joy, John.
In the sense of, okay, so when they were going to lose their place at the company, she was trying to fight to keep it, and, so Ward went to say, I'll take the deal, and he's like, oh, well, she already declined it, like, she was trying to fight, and blah, 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 and then she was with her father, and, she was PO'd at what happened with her father, but, she was being the ruthless business person at the end, and blah, blah, blah. Like, did she just walk away from Rand Industries? Like,
I'm not, it's kind of a blur right now. I know it's only been maybe a week and a half since I watched all these episodes at most, but I don't remember why in the end she was separated from everything else. Like why she ended up off and on her own and not part of the team.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure what.
I just finished it over the weekend, and it was just like they didn't explain it. They show them replacing Danny's father's picture with Danny's picture, and
right, and the other ones with Ward's.
Right, Harold's picture with Ward's, but that's it. Like they don't say, oh, and Joy is no longer with the company. They don't explain it at all. They just show her at a table talking about doing devious things to go after Danny.
The only thing that I can sort of surmise is that they did end up Harold ended up killing that other head of the company, a board member, who I feel bad that I'm going to say the black guy, but you know who I'm talking about. I just don't remember his character's name. That's all I'm saying. He will happen to be black, but he got killed off by Harold, and Joy was part of that plan. So it's possible that the reason that she's on the run is because she knows that can get connected back to her, and therefore she's not. She basically is a fugitive at this point and can't even participate in the business. So rather than face charges, She's just funny.
Was that character Lawrence Wilkins?
Sounds right.
As
yes.
portrayed by Clinton Davis?
Clinton Davis, yes.
Yes. So, sorry, Mr. Davis.
IMDb. So, I mean, again, I couldn't recall his name, off the top of my head, and I couldn't think of a better way to describe who I was talking about. But the defense is all awry. That's the only justification I can think of as to why she was out of the picture at the end, because her hands were dirty when it comes to his death. Whereas Ward's are harder to, they're not clean, but they're harder to put, to pin anything on him, seeing as, the only crime they could really pin on him is part of the conspiring to know that his father was alive while he was, fraudulently pretending to be dead. But if they have good enough lawyers, they can argue around that. And I'm sure that Jerry was willing to be his lawyer, probably less so to be Joy's. Which, bringing up Jerry, I will say one of the things that I found interesting in the show is that having Jerry Hogarth and having Claire Temple in this show, in a weird way, ruined the show because they were so much better as characters than anyone else in the show.
I agree, unfortunately.
I mean, they only Jerry Hogarth only had to be on screen for 5 minutes to class the place up, and it made everyone else look like idiots for being next to her.
Yeah.
No, I read that online. I don't agree with that so much.
Well, wait a minute.
Whoa. I was yelling at the television.
Jessica Henwick did a pretty good job too. And Jessica Stroup was good. No. I think it was mostly writing and direction that was her problem. And David Wenham, he's always good as a bad guy.
He is. He was kind of obsequious though, and which was good. But he got under my skin.
Come on. He's like, here's some ice cream. You don't like my ice cream? I'm going to take your eyes out.
Hold on.
You're right.
My issue with that comparison is you've already seen Claire Rosario Dawson in 4 other seasons of.
That's not the point.
You've seen her, the other one, in a bunch as well. So
yeah, but that's nothing to do with
that's not the point. My point is that I'm sitting there watching the show and I hear Danny say something really dumb, and before I can say that's really dumb, Claire says that's really dumb, and she did that more than once. She's basically being the voice of the audience to point out Danny Rand being an idiot and an asshole.
But that
shouldn't be.
But that wasn't the only thing. I mean, the other thing was, I'm pretty sure Carrie-Anne Moss carries enough weight that.
Oh, she carries the gravitas, yes.
Yeah. So, it wasn't just gravitas; it was the fact that if she came to a part in the script where she didn't like, I'm sure she evened out some things.
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't doubt that Rosario Dawson did the same thing. Like, I'm sure some of her, quips weren't necessarily scripted.
Yeah, because you didn't see that kind of writing anywhere else, did you?
Not really. Like basically saying how Danny's plan is a stupid plan, and yet it still ends up being the plan that they enact. So my guess is her writing her line to tell him that this plan is idiotic wasn't in the script.
But
so she might have injected her talent to say, hey, this plan seems kind of dumb. Can I say that seems like a dumb plan?
But my point is that when you make a comparison like that, it's almost like you're confusing confusing poorly written characters to talent, and I don't think there was anything wrong with the acting per se, as it was. That's how the show was written and directed. Well,
no, like I said, there were a lot of good actors in this. The problem being that, I mean, first off, there is another level of acting when you bring in Rosario Dawson and Carrie-Anne Moss. I mean, they are a level above most of the actors in this.
I think there's also the fact that they come with pre-created. I understand what you're saying, Dave, but I think you're right on the wrong level. I think that the issue is that these characters existed, And so the writers didn't have an opportunity to fuck them up as much. And sorry, I just went blue there.
That's what I'm saying.
Because they had an establishment that, like, you couldn't go against their characters and get away with it.
Right. And I'm sure, and I agree with John's point, where when they looked at the script, they probably could, at this point, they could say, they would say Claire wouldn't say this, she would say this. You know, that, like, I get,
and they had that weight in the set to say to make that change.
None of the other actors at this point had that option because these were new characters.
What the script really needed was the ghost of Carrie to come down and help with the dialogue. Carrie Fisher.
Oh, well,
she could have fixed this.
She could have doctored it. She could have. You're right.
Yeah, but you know, it just. I mean, okay, it sounds like we are beating a lot on this, and justifiably, righteously, but and overall, it was, you know, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to give people the impression that they shouldn't watch this, because you're going to need this for backstory when we get to Defenders, where hopefully there are different writers or more oversight.
I did actually like the nods to that, by the way. Like, so there was a point where Claire was sitting and, like, reading over a letter, and you couldn't really read what she was reading in the letter.
But you know who it was from.
But you know who it was from. And you knew what that was from.
Well, you know, the first line of that was, "I can't wait to have coffee with you."
Right.
It's going to be the biggest, blackest coffee you've ever had.
Right. Might be hard to swallow.
Yeah, but don't go there. That's going to bring up a big point that I have. I want to save that till a little bit before we're finished.
But I will say that I was in it till the end. I was willing to see it through, but it was not as strong as the other Netflix shows. I will say that. I do want to nitpick a couple other things while we're at it, though, just because it's fun. So we had these sort of two conflicting story arcs going on. You had the whole corporate, you know, wheeling and dealing going on one side, and then you had the actual, you know, Danny dealing with Madame Gao and the Hand on the other. And so there was that whole sequence of, like, there was a tournament around the middle of the season or whatever, where you went up against those various fighters. Mm-hmm. And then later there was the, you know, when he was fighting people in China, where they went to try to find where they were working there.
Right.
So in the tournament, like, I mean, again, we already sort of addressed his lack of emotional control a bit, but it just seems really far-fetched that he could be so easily succumb to the seduction of that spider lady.
Oh, right. Yeah, the one that stuck the needles in the back of his neck and really screwed him up.
Exactly. Like, the fact that he allowed her to get that close to him as if he was actually succumbing to her feminine wiles.
Rookie mistake.
Which also was inconsistent with the way he was in the rest of the show.
Right. I mean, he even by that point already stated that he took a vow of celibacy while he was in Kunlun, which would suggest that he has self-control in those areas, and yet found himself lack in that moment. Yeah. So that particular fight bothered me. And to me, it seemed to serve strictly as a means to an end to make it so he wouldn't easily be able to use his Iron Fist during the rest of that fight sequence. I think that's really the only reason they allowed for that to progress. And why he didn't use it at all in the first fight against the two Russian guys, I'm not entirely certain. Or whatever they were, Eastern European of some sort.
Some fake Euro trash accent.
Yeah. But the other fight that really got on my nerves was the pseudo-drunken master fight.
Huh.
Like, what the hell was that about? When he was in China, and there was that guy guarding the door who was drinking whatever it was.
It seemed like they were...
Typical drunken master.
They were doing the drunken master style without saying it. Like, I didn't get that either. Like,
yeah.
Like, is he doing that, or...
Oh, he definitely was. I mean, that was...
Yeah.
who did? There was a movie called Drunken Master.
The
It was
Jackie
it
Chan.
was Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan,
He
right?
did a
Yeah,
series
it was
of them.
definitely Drunken Master. Yeah.
Yeah. There was original Drunken Master, and then Drunken Master 2 got released in the Americas as The Legend of Drunken Master.
But okay, can I bring up my two biggest problems with this?
Sure.
Okay, number one. So we know that the Hand is attacking, right? And Rosario Dawson's character is saying, "Oh my God, don't go up against the Hand. I've been against them before. They killed a friend of mine. Everybody covered it up. You know, these are not people to screw with." Why was not her first? This is how bad the writing is. Why was not her first reaction? Oh well, I know at least two other people who aren't in jail who have special powers and can help you fight these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point she didn't really know or believe that, you know, here's a guy saying, "Oh, I was born to fight these guys." Well, she doesn't know that, but she does know somebody who's super strong and can basically fly, and another guy who can like see, you know, in the dark and fights, basically can fight through anything.
Yeah, I mean, Claire may as well have been dimension hopping the way that she's used across between this show and the others. Because, yeah, she referenced the fact that she knew people like him, but it acted as if there was no way that they could reach out to those guys if they needed help.
Yeah, and they could have, if the writing was good, they could have held off.
But
they could have tried to hold off until they were in China to reveal that it was the Hand, at which point, okay, well, I can't really call my friends in New York to come help you fight them.
because it's the same,
or something.
It's the same
Just
reason
something.
that every time, you know, Captain America goes against somebody in the comic, he doesn't call the Avengers in. Or every time Wolverine has to go against someone in his solo book, he doesn't call in the rest of the X-Men. Like, because it's not their story. That's why.
Yeah, and that was more believable when those stories were more segregated. Like, the crossovers didn't really start happening until the later 70s, early 80s. Before that, the books were treated as separate entities. And the universe didn't blur into one entity until later eras. And even then, they would occasionally they would do it when they wanted to, and then come up with silly justifications for why they couldn't when they couldn't. But,
yeah, like Thor was like rooming with a guy in Australia or something.
Right.
The Fantastic Four are off-world taking care of another problem.
Right.
Yeah, or Superman was in space because space.
Oh, well, we're talking about Marvel. Who knows what goes on in the DC universe?
Yeah.
Well, you still have to make sure Superman's not around because, you know, he screws up all plot lines.
So.
And then
Okay.
And what's your second major issue with the show?
The ending. Oh my God, that last fight, you're expecting, okay, so we've got Iron Fist, he's got his Iron Fist, here's the big bad fight. First off, who's he fighting against? He's fighting against, like, one of the fourth, second level sub-boss. He's not fighting against somebody. There's no way he should have even had any trouble. Again, with his training, he fought a freaking dragon. He should have been able to walk through most anybody in this without any trouble. I can see during the tournament if he had some trouble because these are different masters with different fighting styles.
It's different disciplines that he's not accustomed to.
Right. But Harold Meacham?
Yeah. Yeah,
Come
Harold
on.
Meacham should not have been a challenge. Like, even with a gun, he wasn't a challenge. And yet, even having that scene, which was kind of cool when he punched the bullet out of the air, which is completely unrealistic, but that aside, it shouldn't have drug out as long as it did. Like, it shouldn't have been as challenging a fight as they made it. Harold
should have
doesn't
never
have
landed.
any...
Yeah, Harold should have never landed a blow,
So-
realistically. Because, okay, Danny spent 15 years studying all these martial arts, day in, day out, 24/7, and then ended with defeating a dragon. David Wenham went schizophrenic, got mojoed so that he can't really die, but every time he comes back crazier. And then for the last 5 years, he's been using a punching bag. I'm sorry, but there's a little bit of a difference.
Okay, so number one, you said David Meacham instead of Harold Meacham. Is that a Freudian?
Oh, sorry. David Wenham, Harold Meacham, sorry.
Was that a Freudian slip?
Tomato.
I'll tell you my biggest issues with the ending fight, quote unquote fight. Number one, he pounds the ground with his iron fist, completely destroying that floor.
Yeah.
Which that should have been in the end. That should have. I mean,
Which-
we should have seen a few of those. in
Which,
the
right,
end.
like, then the next scene, you see Ward coming into the office, and it's completely back to exactly the way it was.
I didn't
Oh,
even
that's
notice
right.
that. That is too funny. That completely slipped my mind.
Yeah,
You
like,
sure they weren't on a different floor by then?
no, it was the same floor because it was the same desk, and no.
Oh well, there's more support for your. They waited until the end to do the fight scenes with Danny while they were tracing or
But-
training Finn
But,
drones.
like, so he's running away from Harold on the roof and hiding behind things because he's got a gun and he's shooting at him. He didn't hide from anyone with a gun earlier in the show. Now all of a sudden he's afraid of one guy with a gun? Just so they could have the cool scene of him reflecting the bullet with his gun, other than with his fist.
With his hand. Well, he had. You mean his guns? You meant his guns.
But yeah, it was like, what? Just so he could kick him into a pole, and then have him fall off the roof. Like, it just didn't make any sense, that fight.
Yeah.
See, I could see if like the big bad boss at the end was Bakuto, right? I mean, there's a guy who's been trained all his life, just like Danny had, and had special knowledge of certain techniques. He could have given him a run for his money.
Right, that end would have made more sense because he was suited for that. He even knew things about the Iron Fist that the Iron Fist didn't know.
Exactly. He could have. They could have written some things in where it gave him a problem with trying to use this, but with Danny trying to use the fist.
But they did.
But
They did the typical. No, well, that was what's her face's fight. God, I can think of her.
oh, that was Colleen Wing.
Yeah, it was Colleen's fight. So she's the one who fights him, but then of course Davos stabs him and kills him at the end.
Yeah.
Well, kills him. We all know that he probably is coming back.
Maybe.
Like, they didn't give Danny a clear-cut villain to fight in the show, and that maybe that's a big part of the problem that we're having with it.
Well, if they,
I think he had
with the
too many
writing-
soft villains.
Right.
well, with the writing though, the way the writing was, you could make there is an argument to be made that his true enemy was himself, but the writing was so bad that it makes that
Right,
not
they
possible.
didn't establish that well enough for us to come away with that lesson. Like,
Right.
he didn't learn anything. He didn't grow in any way over the course of this season.
No.
And that's another thing that I think made it worse, is because he clearly had faults. He clearly was flawed in the beginning of the season. And I would have forgiven all of that if there was a growth arc over the course of this season. And there wasn't.
That's what it was. I kept waiting that by the 10th or 11th episode, maybe even the 12th episode, he learns to control his emotions and he becomes so controlled and powerful with the Iron Fist that he's just knocking stuff back and forth, and then they have to find some, like Davos, not Davos, what was the other guy's name?
Bakudo.
Bakudo has to fight him because Bakudo knows how to stop the Iron Fist. Like that would have worked. But no, it was, he still was an emotional wreck by the end of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it doesn't work that he's an emotional wreck, because if he's always been this kind of an emotional wreck, how the hell did he fight the dragon and win the Iron Fist?
And
Was it just, oh, you're the first white person I've ever seen. Here, have a fist.
And something we glossed over, the beginning of the show, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Shows up out of nowhere after 15 years in New York, doesn't wear shoes for the first few episodes. Okay, I will give the character of Danny Rand, last 15 years, he didn't grow up in New York. He was a kid when he was taken in by the monks. So he doesn't understand how that world works. So he thought he could just walk into the building and say, "I'm Danny Rand,"
Yeah.
I could forgive all that, and I did when I watched it. My issue is that there was no way to prove he was Danny Rand other than a thumbprint,
A fingerprint on a clay pot.
on a clay pot he made when he was a kid. I have kids. They take footprints of babies in hospitals and handprints sometimes.
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing about that is, and I can see that being, I'll justify that one, and here's how.
Okay.
When he went to find his dad's files to look into them after all that was absolved, the file box they brought him had nothing in it but an ID badge. So there were efforts to expunge anything that could have verified any of the Rand family if they were to show up.
But they never. But I'm saying they never brought that up as a possibility of a way to identify.
No, they didn't explain it. They didn't explain why those things were removed. But you had that as a clue. The fact that the file box only had an ID badge in it is suggestive that there was a plot that expunged the Rands.
Why would they have, though? Why would anybody? The only time that makes sense they would have done that was after Danny showed up. Otherwise, there would never been a reason to expunge that, because who expected them to come back? Their plane crashed in the middle of the Himalayas. They should,
because none of them were poisoned to death. Only the pilots were. If any one of them survived, they wanted there to be make it a really uphill battle for any one of them to claim ownership of anything.
Yeah, but that's kind of, I don't know. I feel it's kind
Paper
of
trail. I'm just saying, I'm not justifying. I'm just saying they explained it by that.
I know.
That was their explanation. And that they established that, someone had made those efforts a while ago.
I just kind of feel like in 2017 there would have been some way to identify him.
And that's why you went to the hospital to get records, and someone had beat him there and that blew up the file.
That was another scene I had a big issue with. Like, just as he thought about the broken arm and went to the hospital, just happened to be when the bad guy was there to torch the place. Come on.
No, I think that's a point in the fact that people were spying on him and knew that's where he was going, so they beat him to it.
You're defending it. Stop defending it.
I know I'm defending it. I'm just... Look,
well, he has to
I will
defend
tear
it.
it
That's
apart.
the next movie.
I will tear it apart on the merits on which it needs to be torn apart.
Okay.
The little plot points that can be explained away, I'm willing to explain away. But on the larger picture, there were flaws.
So
I feel horrible that like, every time one of these movies, series or whatever comes out and we do reviews like this, we do wind up doing a lot of bashing.
Not always. There have been some things that we reviewed very positively.
No. It's not. We're not bashing all of them, but when we do bash them, we go to town. We dig 6 feet down and we bury
so
it pretty
much.
good.
That's the problem. I think we were all ready to love this because we love everything that they've done with Netflix so far.
And I don't think any of us believed Rotten Tomatoes in the beginning, right?
Right.
We didn't believe.
No, I went into it optimistically. I was like, I was hoping that this was just a matter of critics not knowing the source and being overly critical and being judgmental and willing to hope against hope that the show was going to be good. And then I watched it.
Right. So I think we all feel let down by Marvel in some way.
To be fair, this is really their first falter in a long time, a long run of successes. This is the first time in a long time that they failed in a production, and maybe even in the casting of that production. Definitely in the show running and directing of that production and writing for it. But it's a first for the MCU, for Marvel Studios, in 10 to 15 year run.
Who cares? How dare they? Everything they've done up to now is crap now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe we find a way to get to rating.
In the words of one wise man, a spoonful of wine in a barrel full of sewage and you get sewage. A spoonful of sewage in a barrel full of wine and you still get sewage.
Yeah. I don't know what kind of wines you're drinking, John, but I'm not coming over to any of your dinner parties.
So, from my understanding, so the showrunner was Scott Buck on this show.
Yeah.
And
what else has he done?
Well, that's the thing. So apparently, he was
done.
He was responsible for a lot of the last season Dexter episodes that no one liked.
Yeah.
Oh wait, Tremors 4. Never mind.
Yeah. He was responsible for the downfall of a number of things.
Really?
Well, yeah, like he did. From what I never watched Dexter, but from what I understand, he did the latter seasons of Dexter, like seasons 3, 4, or like 4, 5, and 6, or whatever.
Mhm.
And everyone universally agrees that that's when the show went bad.
Oh, he did the Oblongs?
Apparently,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, and he kills Nikki too.
He killed City Thunder.
This guy's a serial killer. No wonder they let him work on Dexter.
Yeah.
They probably hoped the main character would take him out and finish.
Yeah, so Tremors 4, he wrote, yeah, so, I mean, that's like, that was the thing, like, I found that out, like, because I didn't really look into who the writer was, and I heard that, like, I want to say a week before the show came out, maybe a few days before, and I'm like, seriously? I guess they figured, oh, we have a formula here that works, we can throw any half-decent writer on it, and...
Yeah.
Well, here's what concerns me about that,
all right,
though.
code. We know that didn't work.
Here's the big concern point on that. He's not done with the Marvel Universe. He is slated and has already written several episodes of the new Inhumans show that's coming to ABC this fall.
Yes, I heard that as well.
I think you're probably not going to be able to defend something with, well, at least it's not Gotham.
Yeah, I know. I'm hoping against hope that will be, because he's only writing it, he's not
the
directing
showrunner.
it, as far as I know. He's not the showrunner. So hopefully any sins on that part are rectified by whoever's directing the shows, the episodes, maybe. But it really concerns me now, because I want that show to succeed. I want Inhumans to succeed. Because I think that as well as Marvel is doing with these Netflix shows in general, I think they need to also be doing better on the small screen in the traditional broadcast channels. Because right now it's basically Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. versus the entire CW DC universe. And that's a very imbalanced thing. So I want Inhumans to be good. I want some of the other shows that they're coming out with to be good.
We've got Cloak and Dagger coming.
Yeah, but it's on, and that one I want to be good too, but it's on Freeform, which I don't know what kind of like it's essentially the low budget ABC channel.
Right.
So I don't know.
Have you looked at some of the other writing credits? Because they've got the second listed is Gil Kane for 13 episodes. Now the last thing he did on IMDb was Centurions back in 1986. Now I remember that cartoon, and it had issues.
I don't know what you're looking at because I don't see that listed on IMDb that I'm looking at for that guy.
You click on him, you go to
I'm on it. Like miscellaneous crew. Like I don't know what you're looking at.
You click on Gil Kane, you go down just a few. You just roll down a little, and it's.
I'm looking at Scott Buck.
Yes, no. I'm saying I'm looking at the other writers. Gil Kane is on there for Centurions in 1986. That's the last thing he did, and he's on here for 13 episodes. So he helped Scott Buck, which is practically no help at all. And then Roy Thomas.
Well, Roy Thomas is
the
was the co-creator of, wasn't he? The co-creator of Iron Fist.
He's not listed. He's not listed.
Cartoon?
The comic.
I mean, comic?
Yeah.
That's what I meant to say.
But he is listed on here as having helped out with Luke Cage, Daredevil, Young Justice. So he's,
But yeah, because he created the characters. He's an advisor on the characters.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't mean he wrote anything.
Right. And the thing is, he probably gave notes and they went, oh, okay, and then walked away and did their own thing.
Oh, okay. So no wonder. So it was Scott Buck, Gil Kane, and Dwayne Worrell. Who's he? Do you guys know him?
No. And I don't.
He's probably going to have some other good credits in his...
No, actually, he doesn't. He's got Iron Fist. That's it.
No, we'll see. There you go.
And one Walking Dead, I think.
Oh, well,
One Walking Dead.
Yes, a Walking Dead.
And look,
a Walking Dead.
No one's...
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's not Walking Dead. It's Walking the Dead.
Oh, Walking the Dead. It's not even The Walking Dead. It's something
I don't know
else.
We're not saying that Marvel has to go out and hire Shakespeare to write all of these episodes. But when the guy's biggest credit is killing off Dexter and Tremors 4, you might want to think twice.
The guy's biggest credit is a cartoon series in 1986.
Yeah, you might want to second thought on hiring those guys.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like these shows these are Netflix shows. The budget is very different than it is for a major network TV show. And I'd imagine if we went back, and I don't know who wrote and directed each one of these different Netflix series, but I'm sure not every one of these are necessarily people who've got big names behind them, who have huge successes behind them.
I'm sure J. Michael Straczynski could have shown
But
up with the same money.
But the others,
So I'm just saying they're going for what they can afford to do, and hoping that having the right mindset around it will carry it. And apparently, this is a case where that didn't work.
yeah, I mean that's true. And I do think that because the Iron Fist got delayed a few times before they started it, so I don't know if there was behind the scenes issues. You know, they were talking about Iron Fist just being a movie at one point, a 2-hour movie instead of being a full series, and then they went back to doing a series. So there might have been behind the scenes issues with it that, you know, we don't know and we'll never know.
Yeah.
And they might have ended up cutting budget in a lot of places, and they got what they got. So yeah.
Well, with the right writer, cutting the budget will give you another Deadpool.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So real quick,
all
before we wrap this up here, I did do a poll on Twitter to get, you know, some feeling from our audience on what they thought of Marvel's Iron Fist.
So you showed a poll to our Twitter followers to see how they felt about it?
So the question was, what did you think of Marvel's Iron Fist on Netflix? And
I really wish my options would have fit as the actual question options. I thought they were good.
You know that you can do that as an image and post that, right?
I'm sure.
But no, you can't do an image in the answers. So anyway,
Right.
Well, you wouldn't have to do an image in the answer. All the people would just answer one.
Anyway,
that's not how Twitter polls work. You don't understand how Twitter works. So anyway,
I know the problem. Continue.
So
I know how Twitter works. First, you find a bird.
the 4 answers, the 4 possible answers were: it was awesome, holding out for Defenders, more like Immortal Meh, and I rooted for the Hand.
By the way, my joke that I gave Dave for the third choice was more like the Immortal Mepin, which I think works better because he was the Immortal Weapon.
Yes,
it was a fun,
but it didn't fit.
That's kind of reaching.
But it doesn't fit. I think it was funny. And the first choice was way too long, but I thought it was great. My heart is aglow with the chi of the Shu Lao the Undying.
Yes, it was way too long.
Was way too
So in last place, 17%, their answer was holding out for Defenders, which I kind of take it like you didn't really you didn't think Iron Fist was the best, but
it didn't sour you.
Sour you for the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And then the next most popular answer at 20% was I rooted for the Hand.
I think I voted for that one.
21%, very close second place from the third place was it was awesome. An overwhelming 42% picked more like the Immortal Meh.
Yeah.
So yeah, it didn't land well. And by the way, I did vote for the winning choice. Because that's how I felt about it.
I voted for holding out for the Defenders. Because I kind of, like I said this before, I felt by the time you got to the end of the show, we were only halfway through his origin.
Yeah, I get that. But I don't want origin to be part of the Defenders. I hope that's not what they're doing.
Well, no.
Granted, it's different in writing team, so I'd imagine that's not going to be the case. But it seems questionable whether what was I going to say? It seems questionable whether there will be a second season with how badly the season did.
Unless they totally unless they can save the character in the Defenders movie, make him
That's a lot of legwork. That's a lot of legwork.
Make him a good pivotal character in the story.
Yeah,
and then a whole new writing team for season 2.
Yeah, I mean they definitely need. For a season 2 to come along and be worthwhile, they've got their work cut out for them, and they've got to make it something more compelling and advance the character and advance the story in some significant way. I did read or hear somewhere, I think it was Finn Jones was even saying in an interview that he sees that the Iron Fist origin is 2 or 3 seasons of work. that this first season isn't even the finish of it.
Dear.
And I'm usually on board for long developments for characters, and being patient, but that is too much at this speed.
Yeah, they could have easily condensed it to one season, but
Yeah.
I
mean, if this was the first chapter in a 3-part origin, I would have rather had that take place 100% in Kunlun, and that be chapter 1.
yes,
That would be much more enjoyable.
right. I kept saying, like, why are we only getting these tiny little flashbacks
Yeah.
to Kunlun?
That show us almost nothing.
Right.
Yeah, and the flashbacks weren't even worth it.
Yeah.
I think I've watched a few other reviewers who have all said the same thing, that you could have done without any of the flashbacks.
Yes. All the good old days of being caned by elderly people.
Yeah, literally that was it.
Right.
Which we've seen in Kwai Chang Caine. We've seen in Kung Fu.
Yeah.
So, and the legend
Show us
continues.
all the lovely things that they talked about in stories between him and Davos. The supposedly like amazing, fruits and whatnot, and flowering trees and things.
Or show us the damn dragon.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. Well,
So rating time?
we've beaten this like a young Danny Rand is beaten by Buddhist monks. So
Oh.
And we didn't even bring out our drunken master yet.
no, we didn't.
Hey, I've been here the whole time.
So
Just waiting by the
Speaking
door.
of which,
let us go around the room and give our final thoughts and a rating. And I will choose Mr. O'Grady to be the first.
oh, but the swig I took didn't even take effect yet. All right, fine. Let's see. Okay, so my final thoughts. The character was inconsistently written. The main character was inconsistently written. In fact, the most consistent characters in this were the bad guys, which is kind of wrong. It should usually be the other way around, because the bad guys usually get more range or more room to play. The most interesting thing about this show was the interplay with the Meachums, which could have been its own show. Akin to, a nice CW, young adult thriller. Actually, they already have done that. It's called Riverdale. So I'm kind of disappointed, but, with the writing team being different on Defenders, like you said, maybe they can resuscitate him, or at least put him on some Prozac and, get a good character out of him during that series. So I am going to give this 5 fingers because he still only has.
That does add up to a fist.
Hello? Did we lose John?
No, he's just he got lost in the bottle, I think. You're breaking up, John.
I'm breaking up. Aw.
No, I said we're breaking up, John.
Oh.
We heard 5 fingers, so you're just ending it at 5 fingers and no capes?
Yes, I'm ending it at 5 fingers. That's 5 fingers equals 1 fist, and that's it.
Okay, Ben.
I think that the series needed something. I mean, you shouldn't have to. All right, I'll take that back. It didn't need anything. I would have liked more if there was a Shang-Chi or a Steel Serpent or some other, canon Iron Fist characters that showed up in this to make this more rich. But honestly, I really just wanted Iron Fist to show up. And unfortunately, he did show up, and it was in a 30-second old YouTube video from the 1930s. And that's the only bit of Iron Fist that we really got to see in the show, and that was Orson Randall, I think, is the name of that Iron Fist. And unfortunately, that wasn't enough. I think that they need to go back to the drawing board here and think about what the message they're trying to say here and how they're trying to say it, because this was not one of their best outings for Marvel. That said, I generally do concur with John for the most part. I do think that it wasn't completely unwatchable and horrible, but I don't think I can go above a 5 capes on this. Five. What would you call that thing he wears on his head? Is that a cowl?
A cowl or a bandana with eye holes in it?
5.
It's
five dragon wings.
It's a bad style decision, is what it is.
5 dragon wings. That would be one of the dragons is uneven.
Or it's just one wing, one really awkward dragon.
Awkward turtle.
All right. So my final thoughts. Yeah, no. I mean, there's nothing more to say. Like I said in the beginning of this episode, like Danny Rand is always seen as a wise beyond his age master and very in control of his emotions. We got none of that. Not even a glimpse into it in this. They talked about learning to control their emotions, but he threw that all out the window. So again, it was inconsistent. He couldn't use inconsistency, and over and over and over again. From a company that has given us consistent, well-written characters for how many years now? Since the first Iron Man movie. So yeah, I'm concurring with you guys. Like, this might be the first time, I could be wrong, that we're all giving it the same score. I'm giving it 5 capes as well. Was it completely unwatchable? No. But don't go into it thinking it was the best thing you've ever seen. I liked the Power Rangers movie better than Iron Fist. Okay? I said it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, they were more colorful.
Yes. So,
personally, I was waiting for Finn Jones to go find a place to put on the suit, and then come out and tell Bill Maxwell to go stuff it as he tried to fly off.
Yeah, well.
So
and most people are probably not going to get that reference unless they're old as I am.
Very few people are, John.
He did have blonde curly hair. Now, before we sign off, because I knew you were just about to try to give me the setup, Ben.
I was giving you leeway.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just a couple of things I want to remind all of our listeners. Launched today, is nerdpodcastmafia.com. That is nerdpodcastmafia.com. It is a new, nerd podcast network that we are a part of. The other podcasts included in it are Fans of Patrol, So Wizard Podcast, Nerdtastic 4, Not Another Nerdy Podcast, Geek Yogurt, Dork of All Trades, Open All Powers, and Colt 45. So
I think it would sound more interesting if it were Nerd Mafia Podcast. I'd listen to that.
Look, they're going to make you an offer, John.
That you can't refuse.
And you can't refuse.
So, if you're a fan of any of of those shows, check out nerdpodcastmafia.com. All the shows will be available there, just like they are, on their normal days that they're released.
On all the respective sites.
On their respective sites. But it's a good one-stop shop place to check us all out. And one last reminder, too. Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already done so, please, please, please head on over to iTunes and subscribe to us on iTunes and give us a rating and a review there. If you're feeling generous, give us 5. If you're not feeling generous, give us 4 stars. But all that does is help increase our visibility on iTunes and makes us easier for other people to find us. So again, if you enjoy us, just again, subscribe and review us, and other people can help. You can help other people to find us.
I mean, as much as I enjoyed Finn Jones's greatest American hero hair, I mean, I would have liked to see him wear that cowl bandana thing at least once. But I kind of understand why he didn't, because it's usually those ties in the back are really long,
kind of like a cape.
Kind of like, and they could get caught in the door.
Oh, well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, don't let your bandana ties get caught in the door. Have a good week.